Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Dr. Roshina and today we are going to discuss hypertension. We will discuss hypertension including its definition, etiology and different terms to describe different types of hypertension like white coat hypertension, masked hypertension, isolated systolic and diastolic hypertension, resistant hypertension, hypertensive urgency and emergency, and then approach towards a newly diagnosed patient that will include history, examination, investigation and then management. Hypertension, according to NICE guidelines, hypertension is defined as systolic blood pressure more than or equal to 140 millimeters of mercury and diastolic blood pressure of more than or equal to 90 millimeters of mercury using office or clinical based blood pressure readings. So, in clinics, we must be very well aware that we have to take blood pressure adequately, accurately, I must say it, that inaccurate measurements, whether it is the position of the patient or size of cuff of the patient or the placement of your mercury blood pressure apparatus, anything can add abnormalities to your blood pressure reading. So first of all, patient must be relaxed. At least 5 minutes of rest before taking a reading is mandatory. His arm must be supported on an armchair or patient doctor's desk, and he should be seated on a chair with back support. There should be no tight clothings or constrictions around the arm. Cuff must be at the level with the heart, and the arm circumference, if is more than 33 centimeters, a larger cuff rather than a regular cuff being attached to a sphygmomanometer must be used. So there is a simple rule that the length of the cuff of BP apparatus must be 80% of the circumference of the arm, and its width must be at least 40% of the circumference of the arm. You have to place the stethoscope diaphragm after locating brachial artery in the antecubital fossa slightly towards ulnar side. And the column of mercury must be vertical. You have to inflate to occlude the pulse. Here we assume that you have taken the palpatory blood pressure before. By palpatory method you will assess about systole, and by using a sphygmomanometer, now you have to inflate above the pulse, inflate the level above the pulse. Then you will deflate at the rate of 2 to 3 millimeters per second, and then you will measure the systole and diastole accordingly. While you are taking blood pressure in clinical settings in a patient who has never been diagnosed with hypertension, but now you are suspecting it, in such cases you have to take blood pressure both in right arm and left arm, as well as in one of the lower limb as well, because you have to rule out coarctation of aorta and any abnormality found as well. And once you have taken the blood pressure, it is normally to have a different reading with a difference of 5 to 15 millimeters of mercury in both arms, but if it is more than that, it must be suggestive of coarctation of aorta. 20 millimeters of mercury is taken as cut off. And if there is not a difference of more than 20 millimeters of mercury, if it is 5 or 10 millimeters of mercury, say if it is the patient's right arm is measuring more, is having slightly higher blood pressure than the left, so in future follow-ups you will take the right arm's blood pressure as compared to left. Etiology: there are two types of blood pressure, essential and secondary hypertension. So secondary hypertension, as the name suggests, has some underlying cause, and essential is multifactorial with different factors involved. It covers 90 to 95% of total patients of hypertension. It includes environmental factors, genetic factors, fetal factors, humoral mechanisms, and metabolic syndrome or insulin resistant. And secondary, as the name suggests, there will be many different underlying diseases or abnormalities which will end up either with vasoconstriction or salt or water retention, leading to hypertension. Essential hypertension: Genetic factors, as we all know, hypertension is a familial disease which runs in the family, so it definitely has to do something with genetics. Though currently we don't have an identified genetic component making contributions, but still it is assumed correct. Fetal factors, low birth weight. If a baby is born with a low birth weight or is preterm, it is assumed that its blood vessels or hormonal systems or kidney taking in account that their mass or their structure is not appropriate enough to maintain normal and healthy homeostasis in terms of blood pressure in adult life. So they have a relatively higher risk of being hypertensive in their adult age. Environmental factors, as you all know, if somebody is having genetic tendency to become hypertensive, if we don't control our environmental factors, chances of becoming hypertensive will become much more. As you all know, fat people have higher blood pressure than thin people, and sleep disorders, disordered breathing, that is also known as obstructive sleep apnea, often seen with obesity, may be an additional risk factor for both hypertension and cardiovascular diseases. Alcohol intake, there is a close correlation between alcohol consumption and blood pressure levels. We must know that beyond a normal or safe limit, alcohol consumption can be injurious to health in terms of hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, liver diseases, and many more. Sodium intake, higher the sodium intake is, higher the chances of being hypertensive is. Plus, if you are already hypertensive, taking excessive sodium can end up with poorly controlled blood pressure. So not more than 100 millimoles per day, or 2 grams of sodium, or 6 grams if you say sodium chloride, is not allowed in a patient having hypertensive disease. There are few hypotheses which suggest that taking higher potassium diet can help in reduction of blood pressure, though the exact mechanism has not been known yet, but it has been seen in few studies that if somebody is hypertensive and is having hypokalemia due to diuretics or some other reasons, if you supplementate that potassium, patient can have a better control of blood pressure. So is for the stress. Sole chronic stress cannot cause hypertension. Other factors must also be taken into account, like genetic factors and lifestyle. But yes, in acute pain or stress due to sympathetic overactivity, blood pressure can rise temporarily, and that will be controlled by settling that pain or stress. That does not need any separate antihypertensive drug for that. But yes, for a patient who is hypertensive, permanent or chronic stress can end up with poor control of hypertension. Humoral mechanisms, as you all know that there are different mechanisms which controls the homeostasis of our body, including autonomic nervous system, renin-angiotensin system, natriuretic peptides, and kallikrein-kinin systems. Extensive researches have been done on these systems that poor feedback or an inappropriate control of these systems can end up with hypertension, but still we don't have any convincing evidence that suggests that this is the sole reason behind being hypertensive. Metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance, that is a set of or combination of hyperinsulinemia, glucose intolerance, reduced level of HDL cholesterol, which is a good cholesterol, hypertriglyceridemia, and central obesity. So hypertension is usually seen with metabolic syndrome. So there is a direct association between diabetes and hypertension which has been recognized. So if you found somebody diabetic, look for hypertension, and if you find somebody hypertensive, go for his BSR. Secondary hypertension, we will start with endocrine diseases. I will elaborate them briefly because you are going to read them in details under your endocrinology lectures. Pheochromocytoma, it's a tumor with episodic severe hypertension, and basically it's a vascular tumor of adrenal glands. Cushing syndrome, which can be due to some tumor or iatrogenic due to excessive steroid intake for different reasons that can end up with excessive cortisol and can have secondary hypertension. Primary hyperaldosteronism, that is also known as Cone syndrome. Glucocorticoid expressible hyperaldosteronism, it's a genetic defect in which by giving steroids you can control the hypertension, in contrast to Cushing syndromes where excessive intake of steroid is causing hypertension. So these are a bit contrasting, but this is the way it is. Hyperparathyroidism can end up with hypertension. Acromegaly, primary hypothyroidism and thyrotoxicosis both can cause dyslipidemia, hypokalemia and hypertension. So you have to go for thyroid profile once you diagnose somebody with hypertension. And the last three are basically nephrology related diseases leading to hypertension, where some enzyme deficiency or channel defect ends up with failure of salt and water transport across the distal nephron and ends up with salt and water retention and hypertension. These includes congenital adrenal hyperplasia due to 11 beta hydroxylase or 17 alpha hydroxylase deficiency, Liddle syndrome, or 1 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase deficiency. Pregnancy, you are all familiar with the terms eclampsia and preeclampsia from the knowledge of your obstetrics. Renal diseases, renal vascular diseases or renal artery stenosis leading to renal ischemia can end up with hyperactivation of RAS system and hypertension. Parenchymal renal diseases like glomerulonephritis, as we discussed it in our lectures of nephritic syndrome, and polycystic kidney disease, they all can cause hypertension. Different drugs can also cause hypertension, especially oral contraceptive pills having estrogen in them, anabolic steroids taken by different bodybuilders, steroids taken for therapeutic purposes, NSAIDs for pains, carbinoxylanes and sympathomimetic agents. Coarctation of aorta can also cause differential hypertension, that is hypertension in one limb. White coat hypertension. So as the name suggests, it's a hypertension that is related to presence of a white coat person, that can be a healthcare worker, doctor or nurse. So patient will have a normal BP during usual daily activities, but his BP will be high in clinical settings. We can confirm our diagnosis by repetitive readings in home and clinics, and then we can see further difference. Masked hypertension, it is the opposite or mirror image of the white coat hypertension. Here you will find that patient's blood pressure is lower or normal in office or clinics as compared to the ambulatory blood pressures. In both conditions you have to treat the higher levels of blood pressure, because it has been seen that it will end up with complications of hypertension. Isolated systolic hypertension is defined as the blood pressure more than 130 as far as systole is concerned, but with normal diastole, that is 80 or less than 80, as compared to isolated diastolic hypertension, which will have a normal systole but a higher diastole. In both of these cases there will be widening of pulse pressures, and it is seen in old age patients, in particularly diastolic hypertensions. Resistant hypertension, as the name suggests, resistant hypertension, the hypertension that is difficult to control. So blood pressure that is not at the treatment goal despite of optimal dose of 3 drugs, including 1 diuretic, that can be thiazide or loop diuretic, and it is commonly seen in young patients of hypertension which are having a secondary cause of hypertension, and most commonly nephrology related, like acute GN or acute kidney injury or chronic kidney disease secondary to some GN. In those cases patients are having quite a difficult control of hypertension, and you have to treat them with multiple pills. Hypertensive urgency, it's a severe asymptomatic hypertension, that is blood pressure more than 180 by 120 millimeters of mercury, but there are no signs and symptoms of acute end organ damage. In these conditions you have to control their blood pressure with pills in hours to days. Hypertensive emergency is a severe hypertension with the same cutoff as that of urgency, but with signs and symptoms of acute end organ damage. For example, eclampsia, hypertensive encephalopathy, hemorrhagic stroke, dissection of aorta, acute left heart failure or acute myocardial infarction, or sudden visual loss or retinopathy, that is grade 3 or 4 retinopathy. In such conditions, you need immediate management of blood pressure with IV medications, keeping the patient in intensive care units. So now we will discuss our approach towards a newly diagnosed patient. First of all, in taking history, family history is very important, because as I told you earlier that genetic factor is important factor leading to essential hypertension. So you have to ask about the history of some hypertension being run in families, or any history of some other kidney disease in the family, because it can be secondary to kidney disease like polycystic kidneys as well. Dietary history is very important, because salt intake, alcohol consumption, excessive intake of fats, all of them can end up with hypertension if patient is having genetic tendency. Drug history, as we discussed, that there are certain set of drugs which can cause hypertension, so it is important to see for them. Addiction, as I told you, smoking, alcohol consumption, all can end up with hypertension. And you have to ask about paroxysmal headaches and palpitations in particular to rule out pheochromocytoma. In examination, while palpating the pulse, you have to look for radiofemoral delay for coarctation of aorta. You have to palpate abdomen for enlarged kidneys to rule out polycystic kidney disease. You have to auscultate for renal bruit to rule out renal vascular hypertension or renal artery stenosis. In general physical examination, you will see for Cushingoid face, which can suggest the cause of hypertension. Xanthomas, basically these are fat droplets being seen at certain areas of the body like tendons or the upper or lower eyelid, which suggest dyslipidemias. I will show you a picture later. Apical heave, which you will find on cardiac palpation. You can auscultate a louder second heart sound and the presence of fourth heart sound in hypertensive patients, and you have to go for fundoscopy to see for hypertensive retinopathy. So as I was telling you, these are the xanthelasmas, fat droplet like depositions around eyes. Or hypertensive retinopathy, here you can see the cotton wool exudates and different hemorrhages. So this is a grade 3 hypertensive retinopathy. They have different grades, you have to learn them. So investigations, for all patients who has been diagnosed hypertensive for the first time, you have to rule out the kidney disease or some endocrine problem related to kidney. So you have to go for urine complete examination, renal function test and electrolytes including sodium, potassium, chloride and bicarb. Blood sugar and lipid profile to rule out metabolic syndrome. Thyroid profile, as I told you, is very important, and ECG. In certain particular circumstances, when history is suggesting you a particular reason of hypertension, you have to go for some specific labs or tests. X-ray chest to see for coarctation of aorta, ambulatory blood pressure recording if you are suspecting masked or white coat hypertension, echocardiography if you are seeing any signs or symptoms of heart failure in the patient, ultrasound KUB if you are suspecting polycystic kidney disease or renovascular hypertension, urinary corticolamines to rule out pheochromocytoma, urinary cortisol and dexamethasone special test for Cushingoids, and plasma renin activity and aldosterons to rule out hyperaldosteronism. Now let's come towards the management. So according to JNC 8 guidelines published in 2014, we divide patients in two groups basically, that is age more than 60 or age less than 60, but with two exceptions. One, if patient is diabetic or if patient is CKD, you will not consider the age. In all patients less than 60 years or in all patients having diabetes or kidney disease, irrespective of their age, their optimum control must be blood pressure less than 140/90, as you can see in all these three limbs. Except patients with age more than 60 having normal kidney function and normal blood sugar levels, their normal is 150/90. So if they are having blood pressure more than 150/90, you have to treat it. So for CKD patients, irrespective of their race, you can start with ACE inhibitor alone or in combination with other drugs. And in other patients, if the patient is black, you are not supposed to start ACE inhibitor except if he or she is having chronic kidney disease. And in non-blacks, you will start with thiazide diuretic, ACE inhibitor or CCB alone or in combination. So here you can see that three major groups of antihypertensives include thiazide type diuretic, ACE or ARB and CCB. So these calcium channel blockers, which can be dihydropyridine or non-dihydropyridine. So I am sure that you learned about all these groups in pharmacology as well. So one important thing which was done in JNC 8 guidelines as compared to JNC 7, that beta blockers were removed from the primary antihypertensive drug. So now these are the three major groups, and there are different recommendations except the ones I told. You can start with a single drug and you can escalate it to maximum before adding second, or you can add a second medication before reaching maximum dose of first, because some patients might show side effects of drugs at their maximum dose. Or you can start with low dose combination of two different drugs which are available commercially in the market. And I hope you will learn about these treatments in your house job more. Until now, what you need is more of theoretical knowledge and how to take blood pressure for your final exams. And these xanthoma picture and ECG suggestive of hypertension or a patient with hypertensive retinopathy can be a question you may encounter in your OSCE exam. I tried to cover maximum as far as your final year exam is concerned. If you have any question, you can ask. Thank you so much.